Hey everyone, it's me, your buddy Dave, the host here at The Dark Stuff. Thanks so much for checking out my latest video. As always, it is greatly appreciated. This week, Adam Elk, the singer, songwriter, and guitarist of the band The Mommyheads, returns to The Dark Stuff to get us all caught up on the progressive indie pop band's activity since his last visit in 2020. Mommyheads recently released their 16th album, One-Eyed Band. Naturally, we will be discussing the new album, but the band is also reissuing its 1989 debut album called Acorn. I first became aware of the Mommyheads in 1994 after hearing the EP Flying Suit. That EP was followed by the critically acclaimed Bingham's Hole album in 1995. After many years of recording for indies like Simple Machines, Dromedary, Fang, and Dash, the Mommyheads made the jump to Geffen Records for their 1997 self-titled album. Frequent Rolling Stones producer Don Was manned the boards for the acclaimed record, but label indifference and corporate shuffling ended the band's tenure at Geffen Records after just one album. The Mommyheads broke up at the end of the 1990s, but returned after a decade apart. Nowadays, the band makes a new record every year and tries its best to play as many shows as possible in as many countries as possible. For example, Adam recently performed in Japan for the first time ever. In the show notes are links to the Mommyheads Bandcamp page and website so you can pick up the band's music. Personally, I'm a fan of the entire catalog, but if I had to pick a couple to start with, I'd go with the self-titled album from 97, Flying Suit from 94, and 2021's Age of Isolation. Now let's go ahead and talk to Adam. Okay, well, let's start. So, hey, Adam, that's great. We haven't spoken in over 4 years.
Wow.
Last time we did the interview, I rewatched it. That's why I know. It was during the pandemic. You guys hadn't released Age of Isolation yet, but you were talking about it, how that was the next thing that you guys were about to do. And of course, that ultimately was my number one album of the year and is probably my favorite album that you guys have done in the entire career. But that's not.
Whoa, that says a lot.
That's neither here nor there. We're talking now because you do have a new record out here called One-Eyed Band, which has just been released. Okay, it's your 16th record. Now, since we just talked a couple years ago, there's not much point in rehashing the whole story. I would advise people, I'll put a link below, check out that early interview. It talks about the history of the Mommyheads starting in the late 80s, all the way into San Francisco in the 90s, all the way up to the breakup and the reforming and all of that. So if you want to know the whole story, the extended thing, you got that. As far as what we're going to do today is just talk about the stuff since then, because there's been a lot of activity. You guys have kept up your schedule of one album per year. As you said you were going to do back in 2020, you said this is what we're going to do. Every album, we're going to have sort of an idea or not necessarily a theme or a concept, but like this is kind of what we want to do this year. And then you do it. So feels like that has actually worked out for you. Is that kind of what the situation has been for you guys?
Yeah, we have sort of the opposite problem that a lot of guys our age have. So a lot of guys our age have given a lot of their life force to a career they were destined to have, or a career that they fell into. Like, I never knew I could sell houses this easily. I must be a real estate agent, And that happens when you're in your like 30s, 40s, after your Saturn return, I guess, which is you're at the point where you were born and it's 27 years later. And we have the opposite problem. Our problem is we get together and effortlessly make records. A lot of guys my age can't find anyone to play with in their town, in their suburban area. Everyone else has given to different careers. And we talk about this, and we feel very fortunate and very lucky to have each other after all these years. I mean, I've been playing with Dan since 1989, and Michael as well from 1989, and Jason since 1999. So it's a weird, interesting problem to have, and it's a good problem. And so, okay, so if we have each other and we could effortlessly make these records, let's just do it. And don't be lazy, and make that a sort of accomplishment, almost like buying a house or buying your second car or having another kid. And so that's been the decision. And for me, it's great because I tend to be the pusher guy in the band. Um, I I'm they call me the closer. Some of my friends, I need to see something through. I can't leave something half done. That's why I'm very picky about what I do, because if it's going to be a sculpture that looks like Goofy, or I got to finish it. Like if it's something really stupid, I got to finish it, and if it's something really cool, I got to finish it. So I have to choose the things I do, and combine that with the fact that we have each other and that we have this. It's just easier for us to make a record than for, at least for me, to pay bills and to like call an insurance company or do normal things like activate a new phone, a new iPhone. Like these things are harder for me. But for me to get 10 songs or 12 songs and bring it to them, and for them to pick and choose which they want to work on and which they feel like represents them the most and represents me and represents us, that's the easiest thing in my life. And I think for them too, And it's an interesting thing when you have these guys. It's like a little gang, My favorite movie growing up was Warriors, because I saw them film it. I grew up blocks away from where they filmed the bottle scene. And that gang aspect, you're going to get through all these boroughs and you're going to keep plowing through different types of gangs, and some are going to be friendly, some are going to want you dead. That to me feels like right. I'm a team player, and I love when we can. It's like a microcosm of the world. Can we make four guys? Can four guys agree on anything? And if we can agree on like 10 songs and their parts and my parts, do they like my vocal performance? Do they like the themes? Do they like the lyrics? I mean, this is a monumental task for a lot of people. And for us, we sort of we cut through it like a hot knife through butter. And it's been a blessing. And so we're just taking advantage of that combination, that chemistry, which is so rare for us. The Posies broke up, Jellyfish broke up, all these contemporaries broke up. Even Cake doesn't play anymore. Right. All the bands that we toured with, and if you see bands that are still playing that we play with, like Train or whatever, it's not all the original guys or Counting Crows. Like they're swapping out kids of players. They're not the original. That original impetus is not still there with guys agreeing. They're maybe they're doing it for the money now. They're playing festivals. They're playing with, it's not what they thought it would be. They're playing just the hits and some filler songs. We really have chosen to just be creative. And so that's my long-winded answer.
So the process is still basically one album per year. That's the idea. Are you still operating on this is a sort of statement we want to do, like Age of Isolation. It was because the pandemic was happening and everybody was sort of different. And then you have Coney Island Kid or Genius Killer or various other sort of, I'm sure you're reluctant to call it a concept album, as most people are, because that brings up ideas of like Dungeons and Dragons and dumb shit that like people aren't writing about. But you do have a sort of a concept. And one of the great things I like about the Mommyheads is that you do change it up every time. It's not the same. When I listen to, say, the new album, I'm not hearing the same thing I heard on the album before. Like it's still you, but it's not the same. And you do try to consciously be different. Is there something with the new album that's like, is there a theme with this one? Is there a concept, or what's with One Eyed Band exactly?
Okay, so just going back one step, the problem with concept records to me is they're forced. So a manager or the band goes, we need to make something thematic. And then somebody racks their brain. They come up with goblins and gremlins and whatever. And, so it's a forced thing. And a good concept record to me can be that it was written quickly, and whatever was on your mind, whatever was upsetting you or making you happy, there's a thread from just that quick jot it down sort of linear thought process that just goes on the paper. And so like for Coney Island Kid, I was just really going back in the past and reliving sort of growing up in Coney Island and how I felt about it. No one feels like they want to stay in their hometown forever. It's very, very rare that a rebellious teenager goes, I'm going to stay, And so I always wanted to leave. And so why? And so I just dug into it. And it was a very dark record because Coney Island is the most dystopian place for me I've ever been to. It's just, if you think of like, it's the Warriors movie, basically. You don't need to change a thing. And so we went on tour with Eggstone in Europe, and we backed them. And Eggstone is a band of our sort of generation, but they were the Swedish Mommyheads. And we were playing songs from the 90s that were poppy and uplifting and innocent and about love. And we were backing the lead singer. And it was a wonderful tour. We did 5 shows here. And they're just an unknown band, but they had Tambourine Studios, which helped break the Cardigans. And so by playing this very innocent sort of wide-eyed, doughy-eyed music from the 90s and being the lead singer's backing band, I just completely shifted, and I just wanted to make songs that felt uplifting. And what the feeling I got from Genesis in the 80s, like Abacab and Duke, where it was intricate, but it didn't want to push you away anymore. It was tired of going, we know better. We're this intellectual coastal elite progressive band. You can't play this, and you can't even listen to it, really. Only we can listen to it. Abacab, to me, I love that record. People hate it. It's very open and sort of inviting. And I felt like, why am I fighting this? And so I gave in to this sort of cuddly, progressive sort of inviting music. And it felt great, you know.
Let me tell you, I'm Prog fans will hate me because I actually prefer Genesis with Phil like after Peter Gabriel. And I actually like Duke and Abacab, and I know Abacab is the most hated album in the Genesis catalog.
I love that record.
For some reason, I think that song is amazing. That's a side note, but I'm not even a big Genesis guy, but I mean, that's the stuff that I like. So when Prog is that kind of stuff, I'm into it.
They'll put your name over the entrance and it will say,
like, you guys get a lot of attention from Prog sources, Prog websites and YouTube channels. I've seen when I was doing some research on you a little bit, and I never really heard the Prog element, honestly. Like, that wasn't what I heard when I was listening to the Mommyheads. I heard quirky kind of pop XTC-ish, occasional bouts into sort of, you know, jamming or like a Bingham's Hole or something like that, like where it's a slightly different, but for the most part it was in that pop realm. But I guess I have to concede that since everybody else seems to hear it, a Prog thing, that maybe it is there and I'm just not noticing it. I'm okay with it too, because I think the new album is great. And you were mentioning like Duke. Okay. Is this new album kind of the Mommyheads fun record? Because it does sort of feel more fun, in quotes, maybe, I don't know, than previous Mommyheads records. I mean, I enjoy all of them, but this one does have a funner sort of feel a little bit, maybe on the surface.
Well, I agree with you. Look, we're both Kiss fans, right?
Yes.
They were my favorite band growing up, and you and I agree, right? But you also had, what band opened for Kiss more than anyone? Rush.
Exactly.
And you have two opposite bands. One is like the godfathers of non-English Prog. They're Canadian. They might as well be American because they played her so much. We embraced Rush more than any other Canadian band that I can remember. I mean, the Tragically Hip would have loved to have had those numbers, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think we played with the Hip in Kalamazoo to 10 people, and they said, yeah, we're pretty big at home. This was 91 or 1990. But so Rush and Kiss can play together, because what I love about Kiss is it's simple music. It's guttural. I feel like I could have been in that band. They're band from the boroughs of New York. They're salesmen. They understand that it needs to be pill formed, like an easy pill, not a big pill, but one that goes down easily. And I actually love their music. It's not just the, you know, what everyone knows them for, which is the makeup and the show and the blood spurting. I love those early records. And I think that Rush also tapped into a simplicity. Tom Sawyer, to me, is just a great pop song. And the problem with modern Prog is that it's too complicated. And there's there's mostly men in the audience. It's numbers based. It's too dark, and I'm not feeling emotionally moved most of the time. I feel like I'm intellectually moved because I'm trying to count measures that don't make sense. So the kind of Prog that I like is approachable. It's Beatles based, which is Genesis, and you know, Phil Collins is a Motown guy, basically. You know, his solo records had horns and they were Motown based. So dial all this back, and you have a version of Prog. And to me, what Prog is just interesting for the player. If it's interesting for the player and you're not just thumping out quarter notes and 3 chords, it becomes more progressive. And so for what we do, I think it is progressive pop, because it keeps us from getting bored, but it's simple enough to be understood, I think, and it will move just the normal listener who doesn't see himself as an artisan or a cult, like some very super cultured listener. And I do think what we do at our best is very just an easy listen for something that should be construed as not. And most people don't agree with me. They think we're very, I don't know, too complicated, or they kind of, their eyes crossed. They're like, I don't get it. But for me, I think our simplest stuff is when we can get across. And this new one feels a little simpler. It's less of a numbers battle between musicians, and it's an easier listen than Coney Island Kid, And I just want to add,
Okay.
I just want to add one more thing. You do this, and I love you for it. And this is how you focus your energy. And I'm so, as a band, we're tired of the news, and we're tired of elections. We're tired of politics. We're tired of complaining about everything. And this band keeps us regular mentally. And if we could just focus on doing things that don't hurt anyone, like bands don't hurt people. We're not influencing you to make a vote, or we're not selling you on it. We're just doing our thing. And if you like it, you like it. But there's something so innocent about, what you do, reviewing music and enjoying music and curating it for radio, and what we do, making records. I love at my age how I can feel like I'm actually giving back, but it's not going to hurt anyone. And it's just, that's art. And that's what I think most people, if I can teach my kids about creating and not destroying, and then I've been a good parent. And it's so simple. Just what we do is simple. And I just want to add that on. I really respect people our age that can not just sit around and make comments on other people's YouTube page all day that are so much anger, but just do something nice, So
Well, no, I agree. And part of my idea behind doing the dark stuff was always like, I'm not here to tear down stuff I don't like. I'm here to push up stuff I do like. So yeah, I might not like the new record by so-and-so, but I don't have to talk about it. I don't have to tell you that I don't like it. It's not necessary for me to put that out there into the world. It doesn't matter. But if I want to tell people about the Mommyheads every single time you guys put out a record, that's my prerogative, and I'm going to do it because that's what that's kind of what I'm doing.
Yeah, but you know what? You're a radio person too.
Yes.
And in radio, and I love DJs that email me and they're like, great record. And I love listening to their shows because radio is a positive energy force, meaning if you don't like a record, you don't spin it. Pure music press that we used to read and that still sort of is limping along, they will actually write a bad review on purpose. They will print a bad review instead of just ignoring it. And I think that's a negative approach to music meets, critiquing. And so that's why I think your radio background keeps you in a positive space versus a negative space, which is pure music press, which will tear an artist down and try to ruin their career for no reason.
Well, everything is now algorithmic based and trying to get as many eyeballs to a certain thing. And that does work with negativity. It's harder with positivity to get people to, it's like, okay, I like this new record from Mitski or whatever. And it's like, is somebody who likes Mitski want to read something that's very positive? Or do they want to look at something where somebody is shitting all over Mitski and saying how terrible it is because they just want to get riled up and they want to respond?
Who would burn his own house to the ground for one emotion?
One of the things I wanted to ask about, because when we talked years ago, you were dipping your toe into more touring in the States. It was sort of like you did your Swedish excursion every year, but in the States, it was very, very minimal because it was difficult to, from a financial perspective. And of course, the United States is so vast. And if you're all the way on the East Coast, how do you get all the way to the West Coast? So, but it does seem over the last couple of years that you guys have increased your touring a little bit more. I've noticed a lot of different YouTube videos. I follow you guys on the socials and stuff. And I see show announcements. What is the current status of your live thing? Is that an accurate assessment? Like you are doing more live playing nowadays?
Yeah, we are. We love playing together, which is an amazing thing. It's a gift to get on a stage and see a band that's been playing together for 20, 30 years. There's just something unspoken, and there's something that it's a lesson in humanity, and just it's just amazing, right? And so we feel that as players, so we love playing. It's just hard in America. When we go to Europe, if we get a buzz in, let's say, Stockholm, that buzz really transfers to Malmo and Gothenburg, and there are people in every town, and it's a smaller environment, and it's word of mouth matters. And the drives are 2 hours long, 3 hours at the most. And the clubs have amps and drums, and they're really nice and new, and they provide sleeping arrangements, and the food is really good. It's just very curated in a wonderful way. When you play America, you walk in the front door, the doorman's pissed off, the bar is, it's the sound, you never know what you're going to get. Is it really bad? Is it really good? It's not a supported infrastructure. Clubs are sort of, they're the bastard children of businesses in most towns. They're barely hanging on. They didn't pay their last 3 months rent. The owner of the building hates them. There's just a lot of, it's not, in Europe, it's the taxes are high enough where everything is supported and you could feel it. And so we've been playing together a long time, but it's delicate. You have 3 bad gigs in a row and you're in your 50s. You kind of want to go home and, and just go back to your routine. You're not 20 something year olds anymore. So I think the touring America has the ability to crush a band a lot sooner than playing Europe. And I went to Japan recently, played 2 shows, and that was so much fun. And it was so supportive again. And I could play Japan forever. It's just, they're feeding you, so there's this delicate balance of touring. You're in a van, everyone's has a cold at any given time. You're not sleeping, you're eating like terrible food. And so you just want to make sure that there's that little bit of support. And so for us to be touring the amount we are in America is awesome, and the West Coast is fun. We have great shows in San Francisco, Seattle, Portland. New York was fun. Chicago was fun. But to get to Chicago, to get to these places, you got to play a lot of, markets that are a lot smaller. And unless you have a massive hit or you're just, guided by voices and there's just these fanatics, it's not easy. And so I'm always aware of the fact that a bad tour can break us up.
Yeah.
And it could unwind this delicate fabric that we've created. And so I push for it, but I'm always cognizant of, I could be a long tour at right now could be a massive mistake. I'd rather make records where we're happy and feel fulfilled than do a 30 city tour like when we were, in the 90s and at the end go, this is not for me, So it is a political thing. It's just, you gotta look at the small micro picture when you're recording and all that, and then look at the macro picture and go, what's going to break us up? What will harm us as a unit? And I think the number one thing is a bad tour. I think it could really harm a band of our vintage.
Now, I was going to ask you about this Japan thing. So you went to Japan by yourself, or was it with the band? And did you go as Adam from the Mommyheads, and it was sort of that sort of thing? Or what? How did you get to Japan in the first place? I mean, what's that?
Interesting you say that. So our Geffen record, there's a version. Wait, that's not it.
Yeah, at the back of it was, but
yeah, this is the Japanese version.
Okay.
So this, wait, there we go.
Yep.
You can see it kind of. This is our Japanese only official release, and it got sort of snuffed out, but before it got snuffed out, people bought some. And so as a graduation gift for my son, where do you want to go in the world? And he said, Japan. So I bought 2 tickets and we had a week in the spring. And then I'm like, well, I'm going over there. I'm going to talk to my promoter friend. And he's like, oh yeah, people want to hear these songs. They don't think you're ever going to come. So he booked me a show in Osaka and a show in Tokyo. And then a week before we went, my son bailed because he had a date with a girl to his junior prom. He had statewide tests, and he had and another thing. So he didn't go. I went with an empty bed, but I showed up, and the first club was wonderful. It's a little pop club in Osaka. There were families there that brought their kids and their grandkids, and it was.
Wow.
And the thing about Japan is they request songs through the booker. So they asked the booker to ask me to learn basically this Geffen record. and I hadn't played them since '97, and it was such a joy. And it's a lot of signing autographs, great for the ego. And then Tokyo, we played in a bigger place, and it was packed. So I loved it. The food was amazing. The dollar's really, really strong. The yen is weak. So I lived like a king and came back and felt really great. And that's what 2 good gigs can do, make you feel like a rock star.
Right.
Unlike 3 bad ones. So it was fun. I'm so glad I went. And it's a wonderful place. Like, I feel like here, if you're an aficionado, let's say you're a pop aficionado, or you have a blog that's specific to blah, 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 right? There, it's a whole country of it. I call it a country of aficionados. And if you have your thing, you can totally have a network of people that rely on you for that information. And case in point, there's a bar called the Crimson Bar. I think they play King Crimson all day long. I mean, it's wonderful. You go to that bar, you meet other Crimson fans. I went to a bar that just played rare English punk rock from like 71 to 79.
Wow.
The stuff that Malcolm McLaren couldn't get his hands on. And I loved it. Like, I was like, who's this band? And they're like, oh, that's the Rough Darts. And who's this band? Oh, those are the Tweedledees. And I learned about punk rock from England. And that's all it was. And so I loved it. It was wonderful. I'd go back in a heartbeat.
On the new album, we talked about how it does have sort of a more fun feel or whatever, but is there an overarching sort of theme to One-Eyed Band, or what do you mean by the title and sort of the artwork? Because it's a very good visual. I really like that. I also like it on the mouse pad, which I don't know if you saw in my video. I said I've got all these Mommyheads coffee mugs. It was good to get something different. Like, now I can actually use this mouse pad, because
I want to have a request line where people just tell me what should be our next merch.
Yeah,
because it's fun to design stuff. I feel like people who don't have CD players prefer the mouse pad or the coffee cup over the actual CD, but that's just me.
I need to have a physical thing of everything. I'm never going to be satisfied with just having something digitally. Totally. That's maybe my age. Maybe that's, the era that you and I grew up in, where I mean, yeah, I'll stream something, but if I care about it, I want my own copy of it, because I believe all this digital stuff one day will just disappear.
I agree. That's why stations still need CDs. They've had hard drive problems. But I also agree I love every record to have some sort of thought behind it. And it's not just some random picture, but maybe that's a progressive thing, but the visuals should match the intensity of the music. And we're really into it. But we grew up in an age when Dark Side of the Moon, that visual meant something, or the King Crimson first record with the guy screaming meant something. I like a visual that you could put on the back of your denim jacket back in the 70s, and you could be proud of that visual. But in terms of this record, I think that, again, that same topic of one record a year, why, and this record, the visual was, well, we're so, unanimous about our approach, and we just want to keep doing it, that is it good or bad? Is this, this vision of going forward and keep making records, does it close your scope? And instead of having 2 eyes and some perspective, sometimes when you're looking at something and you cover one eye and you're trying to get focus, what if our focus is just so intense, but it's one eye, and that we're so, is it a good or a bad thing, what we're doing? All this output and all this intensity into this band. Are our families suffering? Are our kids not seeing us enough? Is our work life schedule suffering? And so that was the topic for the visual, which is a band holding up something that's producing something, but it's heavy, it's marble, and it's shooting its product up into the universe, but that band is looking down. They're so focused, they can't even see the reward. And so that was the theme of this record. And also it was in a lot of the songs, like Life is a Dream is about how the family suffers. So the husband and the wife is dealing with what she does, and the husband's doing, the father. And it's like, here are all the things that these two left behind to achieve their goals. What did they leave behind in life? And that's the second song. The third song, Season of Our Sound, is basically about the whole life of the band. It goes back to us being in the van and focusing and driving to the next show. What are we missing in life? And it's about the band losing its way. And the roadmap is in the chords of the songs, almost like when like mysteries, like a Rosetta Stone, how we found a Rosetta Stone, we can uncover the meanings of all these languages. That's in our music, but the band doesn't know that. And so that's Season of Our Sound. Architect is about being so driven that it's really about a student in a museum and taking notes and being in awe of these big sculptures and beautiful art pieces of artwork. And all they could think about is, I want to make that, but not like what that is. It's just, I just want to be famous and make something big. And so that's the concept behind Architect, and it goes on and on and on. And,
yeah, no, this is why I don't try to interpret lyrics. And,
yeah, right. You thought it was something else.
Well, no, like I've been wrong so many times when I have sort of thought a song was about a certain thing. And so I've gotten to the point where like, I don't want to try and interpret it not because I don't want to be wrong. It's like a lot of artists will tell you, well, they don't care like whether you actually get what I specifically meant. It means something to you. And that's the important thing, right? Like the listener.
No, it's an honor.
You do sometimes find out that like, okay, like I use this example all the time of the song Green Eyes by Husker Du. Like, so Grant Hart was bisexual. He had a boyfriend. He had a girlfriend. Which one did he write the song about? He wrote it about his cat.
Right.
When you actually hear him tell the story, no, he wrote it about his cat. It wasn't about. So then it's like, well, does that lessen the song? Or like now that I know specifically he wrote the song about the cat? No. But it has gotten me to a point where like I back off trying to interpret lyrics now. I just kind of try and get a vibe.
Oh, look, Martha My Dear by McCartney. You're like, who is this woman? I feel like I know her. And it's about his dog. And you do know her. You have an animal. I'm sure you have a dog or a cat in the house.
Yeah.
So you do know her. And that's the thing about music. If you want to get a point across and you just say it, most people are going to go, I don't agree with you. But if you put music to it, and I always say this, music is the ultimate syringe. Look away for a second. Is it happening? It happened. It's done. It's already in. And so if you can put a nice melody behind it, you can take something about a dog and make it universal. Where if that was a woman or a man or whatever, I want to know that person, or I feel like I do know him. I've known him my whole life. And so that's the beauty of art. If it's simple enough, and you don't need to know who it's about. And even me saying that this record is about all the things that you give up by wanting to do your art, or, being so focused that you lose sight of the bigger picture. You don't need to know that. I'm sure if you live life, you're going to sacrifice something at some point, and it will make sense. You'll just stick your own face on there of someone you know, or your own experience. And that's why this is a communication business. And even though if the Mommyheads have 10 fans, right? 20 fans total that care, we're just communicating to those 10 or 20 people. And I've met them all. They're high quality, awesome people. They're our friends. This is just us having a conversation with them. And next time we see them, our lives will be a little richer because they're going to tell me about their life. And they already know what's happening with us through the music. And so that it's communication. I don't see it as entertainment. I don't see us as a one-sided go on the stage and fire comes out, and the show's over and we're back in the tour bus. It is about us going, wow, that was such an interesting song. Can we talk about this? And it's communication based. It spurs on more communication.
Well, will there be we addressed more increased touring. So what are the plans for the Mommyheads? I mean, it's the end of the year now, so the new record just came out. I assume you'll be doing it, some type of, promoting or whatever, doing interviews like this. But is there a plan for 2025? Is there something going on next year? I before you get to that, I do know that you are, I had it here in my hand. Oh, this album, Acorn, is being reissued, your debut.
Yeah, in January. It's
right in January. So that's coming out. And we'll talk about that for a second here. But because it's funny, because that's when I first got into you guys, the first record I heard was the EP was
Magumbo Beatbox?
No, it was let's see, what did I it was Coming Into Beauty. No, it wasn't Coming Into Beauty. Which one did I hear first? Hold on, I put them all next to me.
Probably Flying Suit.
Flying Suit.
Yeah.
And then I saw you guys on Bingham's Hole tour. That was the first time I saw you play live. But when I went to go get another Mommyheads record, the only one I could find at the time was Acorn. So I have this on vinyl still from back in the day. But it was so different than what I had just heard with the Bingham's whole band, right? Like this could not be more different than what you guys were doing just a couple years later. But anyways, that's a little side note with me. But so let's talk about 2025, what you'll be doing, this record, and then anything you're doing in terms of One Eyed Band.
Well, we'd love to have another record out, obviously, because that's our decision to do that, which is fun as hell. And then Acorn, we found the impetus was Chris Rail, who was Fang Records, found the original reel-to-reel master in his mother passed in the attic of his mother's house.
Wow.
And he came in and the thing looked so bad. It looked like something from the 1700s. So I brought it to Fred Kevorkian, who did all the Nine Inch Nails records and the White Stripes. He's an amazing mastering engineer, all the Fish records. And I said, can you bake this and get at what's left? And he did, and it sounded really good. So he mastered it finally. It never had a master. It was like the quietest record ever. And, you know, the record had a blip of success. I know the guys from Pavement were DJs and loved it. It was sort of came out when Slint was popular, and it was everything was pared down and interesting and lots of time signatures, but very, it sounds like a high school band learning how to do time signatures. So I was just like, Fred, make it sound incredible. And now it's finally mastered. So that's the impetus for that. The original tapes are finally here. And it's exciting.
Now, who was the Mommyheads on that record?
Jan,
who else?
So it was me, Jan Kotek, who passed away in 2007. A wonderful drummer. He's 17 or 18 or 16 on this record.
Oh, wow.
Which is phenomenal. And Matt Patrick, who goes by Devin Patrick now. And he sounds great. And we don't know what we're doing. It's just one of those records. It's just, you know, it was better than, and we played CBs constantly, and it was better than high school just to play together. So there's that. But the one thing, and I'll try to keep this short, some fans wrote a musical and at Charlie and Sarah Hitchcock, and they approached me after it was done, and they said, we want to do more with this. We love your band. Not enough people know about you guys, and we love it. So we wanted to use it as inspiration for a musical, and it's called Speaker Heart after the song off New Kings of Pop. It's about a band. It's essentially about us when we were younger, but in their words. But the lead singer has a speaker for a heart. They went literal, and there's a Edward Scissorhands sort of take on being in a band, and it's just very interesting. And we had a run through recently. It's called a 29-hour reading, where they rented a theater on Bleecker Street in New York. They had all these heavyweights come in, and it was performed like a Broadway show. It didn't have all the fireworks and stuff like that a show does, or a pit orchestra, but they were reading it and singing it, and it was so moving. And there was like 20 to 30 people that made it happen. A production team, a dramaturg, a casting director, a director, an assistant director. And the band was there, and there were 22 Mommyhead songs. And I got to say, we were completely moved by it, and we would love to see it actually have a run somewhere. And I know that the guys from Guster just were part of a musical that happened at BAM, and it was incredible. And this is the thing that's happening now, because a lot of musical writers are looking for source material. They're looking for new music, and you can only do so much with Huey Lewis,
right.
or Carole King, or Neil Diamond. Like, we know these songs, but for something that feels original and you don't need to spend 10 years curating a musical journey, it's already there in a catalog. I think it's a wonderful idea. So that's something that the next year is going to have a little more of, is us.
So this is a show that's entirely uses Mommyhead's music, or just that song, just the one song?
22 plus songs, and It's 2.5 hours, which they got to call down to 2. But we sat there listening to 7-part harmony stacked of what my fingers play on the guitar, because I have 5 fingers and we have a vocal and a harmony. They had 7 people sing that at points, and it was just riveting, and it was just shook the walls. And it did it and musical theater at its best makes you cry and laugh at the same time. It's this weird reaction. Like, if tears aren't flowing, it's not good, right? And if you're not giggling when the jokes happen, it's not good. So there's all this emotion. You feel exhausted at the end. And I loved it. And when you see us play live, you're not exhausted, you're not crying, you're not laughing. It's just you're going, oh, cool band. But to see it done in this sort of Broadway context is really incredible. And so I want to try to do everything I can to help the writers get this off the ground and into a larger space. And it could be London, it could be Winnipeg. Who cares?
No, that sounds really interesting. That would actually get me to go see a musical,
right?
You know, because I mean, I my issue with musicals is always when they start talking in song, and the conversation, like that's the part that gets me. Like I get singing the songs and having these big dance, thing, but then when they start talking in song, then I'm like, you're losing me here. Like I can't take this seriously. However, I haven't seen any of the musicals. There have been some that are based on music that I know that's more modern and whatever, and that might be a different take for me, and maybe this will be something that I could appreciate. So what was the name of the show, or what is it?
It's called Speaker Heart, and it's funny you said what you just said, because I said to them, I don't go to a lot of musicals. If I go, I'm going with my wife or my mother-in-law and my wife, and I'm kind of just getting through it. There's never been a lot of musicals for me or dudes I know. My generation, my people. I don't go to my friends, and we're cracking beers open going, did you check out Wicked? It's just not a thing like that we talk about. We'll say, are you going to see Beat with Levin and Ballou and the guy from Tool? But if there is a musical out there that would work or accommodate me and my people, like dudes from, in their 50s, how cool would that be? Where we can actually go and sort of go, this feels vaguely like something I would want to go to, and not just be dragged along by family on Thanksgiving weekend,
Right.
So, I mean, I feel the same way. I'm totally behind it. And if it felt like it, I like to remove any cheese factor that would pin the BS meter for guys like me. And I think because I'd rather go to rock show and just lose myself and not have to sit there as they break the third wall and do like Mel Brooks jokes,
Right.
Like, I love Mel Brooks, but like when it's on stage, they really have to keep your attention, and it gets really cheesy, and it's self-referential, and it's very self-aware. The jokes are too current. They're cheeky, and it's just not my thing. So this would be really cool to have the first prog rock musical or something. I don't know, whatever you want to call it.
No, I think this could be really interesting, and who knows what sort of things it could open up and interest in the band. And then do people look at some of the other records and such and be like, oh, we missed this band. Like, how did we miss them, all these years ago and whatever. And
please.
Yeah. One of the other things that you guys have been doing in addition to the album a year sort of thing is you have been reissuing a lot of your old stuff that was either gone, out of print, whatever. I mean, I'll just show real quickly. So here's my original Bingham's Hole. Then we got the remastered or reissued. Your Geffen one. I mean, my OG, whatever. And then we got the remastered one. You just did Coming Into Beauty.
Yep.
That's the old artwork, and then we got the new artwork on that one. So now and then plus this thing, Swiss Army Knife.
Oh yeah,
This is like your earliest demos, right?
85. I was 15. It was on Simple Machines. There's two reasons for putting all these out. A, none of those originals were mastered.
Oh.
And most people don't know what mastering is. Mastering is another set of ears that takes your music and makes it applicable to every speaker in the world. So when you're on your headphones making a record and you just upload it to Spotify on your own, and then Jay-Z track comes out, it's going to blow your track away, and it's also going to not distort and vibrate your Honda Fit in ways that you never dreamed. So it's all the clarity is just there. All the things that are bad are removed, that kind of make speakers sound farty and distorted. And we never mastered any of that stuff except the Geffen one. So we remastered with Fred. Now they're out. And the Geffen record we put out because Geffen didn't even have it on digital media. It was nowhere. And so I sent it to radio. It cracked the top 100 of college. And the next day, the Geffen people that still are there sitting on that record uploaded it to digital. So it was mostly like a challenge from us to go, when are you guys going to sort of make this available? It was just not anywhere. So the second reason for putting all this out is I love when 20-year-old DJs or 18-year-old DJs reach out to me and they go, "This is so cool. It sounds so different. And did you just record this?" And I have to tell them, no, it's from 1985. I was 15. I think you're reacting to the fact that, you know, it's very innocent and it doesn't care about what's in the top 10 or top 100. And to get those emails about something from 1985 is so fun. So it's a challenge to the world to see if it's current or if it sounds relevant. And a lot of these recordings, not as an ego boost, but to know that something you did when you were 15 in 1985 can still sound relevant to a 19-year-old DJ in New Orleans is really rewarding. And so that was the second reason that we keep putting stuff out. It's not just here's, you know, our whole catalog, look at us, but it is sort of a litmus test to see if it's still current and to give it a chance, because Swiss Army Knife was 100 cassettes. That's all it was.
Right.
And it was Jenny Toomey and Kristen in their basement. And, you know, they were putting us out. They were putting David Grohl's solo stuff out post Nirvana or before Nirvana. He had his stuff when he lived in DC. There were other great bands like Unrest, you know, all those classic DC bands. And so it's just making it available in the digital world.
For a band that, I mean, people just probably discover you guys almost every day, you know, like it's a new thing of like, oh, the Mommyheads. I watched an interview with you the other day with somebody who had just heard of you from the last record. Like Coney Island Kid was the first record that they had heard. So,
which I love. Like,
yeah,
what
which
a great.
I think is interesting because I go so far back with you guys into the 90s, and like I forget that like for the average person, you guys are a 21st century band, like a newish thing to them, not a retro thing or a thing from like, you know, 30 years ago when I remember you guys played at the Rathskeller in Madison, Wisconsin, and you slept on my floor in my apartment or whatever. Like it was a different world back then, you know? I mean, it was totally different. And now you're in this different sort of scenario. So I'm happy about it too, because I do love the band and I do want, you know, success for you guys and on whatever that means to you. You know what I mean? Like not everybody has the same idea of what success means. Success does mean for me to get you guys to Omaha at some point, because we still need to have we still need to have that happen at some point. So if you guys were to go on tour tomorrow, what is the lineup that would be on tour with you? Who is currently playing in the band, and what's the lineup as of today?
Well, we have Dan Fisherman, who I've been playing with since 89, 90.
The drums. Yeah,
on drums. And he's without him, this band would not exist. He's where my brainwidth stops, his starts. He just takes over. So yeah, we've been playing so long. There's a lot of things we don't need to discuss anymore. It's just, but you know, we just have a silent language about how this band should be. And we completely agree that it should just be about the music. Jason McNair, who we met in California when we were there, and we've been playing together since 1999, and he's awesome. He's actually a metal guy. He grew up with Iron Maiden, and Judas Priest, and he was a real punk rocker, like true punk rocker. You know, his bands in San Jose would open up for Social Distortion when any band like that would come through, they were the opening band. And he brings a real intensity to this band that, if not for that, we would probably be singing it'd be a lighter affair and more mental and more coastal elite. You know, it really brings a working class sort of skater punk thing. So it's an excellent. He diversifies the band in a great way. And Michael, our keyboard player, who records with us, Michael Holt, who we've been playing with since 89. Oh, sure, no, yeah. But he lives in Cape Cod with his elderly parents, and so he only records and doesn't tour. And we just got a new keyboard player. So when this guy came to a show named Barry, and then he loved it and came up and said, "I love you guys. When's your next show?" And I said, "Stockholm." And we flew to Stockholm, and he shows up. And he shows up in Malmö, and he shows up in Kristianstad.
Wait. So he showed up in Stockholm, but you didn't know he was going to be there?
No, and he just goes, I'm like, it's Barry. And so he followed us like we were the Fish or the Grateful Dead through Sweden. He showed up to 4 shows. He went to a festival show, and there was his face in the crowd. And when we got back, we were desperate need of a keyboard player. And he said, I know all your songs, and he's great. So our current keyboard touring player is Barry Paul.
Nice.
And he's our age. Go figure. You know, he was born the same year as I am. And his love of music is exactly the same as ours. Like, he loves the same bands. And so in the van, when we were touring the West Coast, his DJing was so good. like I was just like, Barry runs the stereo, because I if the drummer plays it, it's Radiohead. If I play it, it's going to be XTC. We've been there, but Barry brings a whole wonderful new element of musicality, and he's just wonderful to be around. So that's the band.
That's
and
the band
Michael,
right now.
Yeah, Michael's sort of the Brian Wilson who just pops in. And
now, when you guys record nowadays, do the four of you get together in a room, or is it sort of like, here's the tracks, you just kind of work on it at home and send me back when you're done? Or are you still getting together, the four of you, maybe with Michael or without Michael, whatever, but in a room playing the songs together? Or is it that not how you do it anymore?
It's hard, when you have the jobs and the families and like I'm driving my kid to colleges now. He's 17. I got another kid who'll be driving to colleges next year. It's very hard to get the band together. And so when I see these documentaries of Genesis at Headley Grange for 3 months doing Lamb Lies Down in Broadway, I'm so jealous. Like, they just lived together, and they were so intimate as a band that that they made a record that sounds like one person wrote it, that just had all these like split personalities. That's how tight it was. We don't have that luxury. And so what has worked is not to sit in a room with no material and just stare at each other and jam. I will bring in classic song structures. I'll have the lyric, I'll have the sentiment and the vibe and the concept. If they like it and they want to continue, if they agree on the concept of the song, like if they feel represented, then we continue. And there's a screening process. I try to keep it minimal. I'll have my synths, my guitar, and my vocal on it.
I can see all your synths.
Yeah, like I can't help it. I just have to put something down. And if they want to work on it, then it becomes a Mommyhead song. And I trust these guys so implicitly that if they don't like it, we throw it away, or it becomes something for Patreon. Like, oh, look at this, this thing that didn't work. So the collaboration happens after we've agreed that it's something that sounds like us. And then they either rip it apart or they play it as is. And generally they rip it apart, meaning I come in and it's double time, and Dan goes, no, it's halftime, and it completely changes. And generally that happens more than less, and that's when it feels like a real band. And I have an idea of what the bass should be. Jason does something completely different, and it's wonderful. And if it's not wonderful, we just keep searching. We don't bash each other,
Right.
We're just like, it's not, doesn't, we're very polite, and it just keeps going. And then we'll rip it. If we feel like it's worthy, then we'll rip it apart, because it's worth ripping apart. The carcass has enough meat on it for us to start fighting, and that's good fighting. It's like healthy fighting where we're all going in the same direction. And once the record starts feeling like cohesive, there's that one-eyed band, that one eye blinking and focusing on one thing. And it's like, if you don't answer your phone anymore, you don't check your emails. And that's when it's really good, when we like the outside world disappears. And, I'd love to have us go to Headley Grange like Led Zeppelin did for half a year, but it's just not in the cards. And yes, they'd spend a whole year,
No, hardly anyone does that anymore these days, unfortunately, where you used to just, we write the album in the studio. We just get there and just do it. You start with nothing and then you wind up with something. Yeah, nobody seemingly does that anymore. I guess the biggest loser in that scenario is studio owners or whatever, like, because they don't get the bookings for like, we're going to be here for the next 3 months. It's like, we're going to try to get in and out of here in like 2 weeks. So I guess we got the new album. We got the Acorn reissue coming up in January. There's this musical that we might see an expanded run or an extended thing on that. There will be probably a new Mommyheads album in 2025, as is the case with all the every year since 2017 or something. I think you guys have had a record every year. So that's basically what's happening. Maybe some increased touring in 2025. Fingers crossed it hits the middle of the country, Omaha. We'll see what we can do about that. I definitely want to make that a thing because I haven't seen you guys since that Bingham's Hole show.
Listen, if we could get a
1995 or
couple,
whatever.
if we get a couple of great like-minded local bands and we could put a dark stuff gig together, you know, maybe it's worth flying out for, and then a one-way drive back to New York when it warms up. Why not try it?
I guess we'll wrap it up here because I know you got to go. But thanks again for doing this. I say to anybody who is like watching this, you know, I plug these guys all the time. We'll be doing our best of 2024 album, and I mean, it will be on there for sure. I mean, spoiler alert, it'll be on my top 20, top 10, whatever it
Awesome.
is.
Listen, I look. You are both troopers. We're both still fighting a fight.
Yeah.
We do this for our health. We do this for our sanity. We do this for our happiness. You know, I think we're going to age slower than most people who don't have an outlet like this. And you should feel lucky. We should both feel lucky that we have this outlet. And I feel incredibly fortunate. And the fact that we get to communicate in a way where, you know, you have this and we have this, and we can have these conversations is really just a blessing. And for us, we don't do it for anything more. Really. I mean, we're not doing this to play Madison Square Garden and have, you know, millions of fans. We're really doing it for guys like you and for experiences like this. We knew a long time ago, and I think this is Dan Fisherman, the drummer, who said this. It's about the process. If you enjoy the process, right? It's not delivering the mail. It's the walk that you take in a spring day to deliver the mail. Yeah. And the process for us is all of this. And, you know, if you enjoy the process, and so when there's people out there that hear you enjoying the process, they get inspired to write musicals. And that is like your new reason for doing it. Like you find new reasons, you find new like the ends, you know?
Right.
And so you can't imprint what you want to achieve as an end on there. You'll be upset because you'll never get it, you know? So this is part of the process. And this is what talking to you and seeing, you know, your output and us being a part of it is part of this process that makes it so rewarding. So I just, that's my big giant thought for the,
well, okay. Adam Elk and the Mommyheads. The new record is called One-Eyed Band. It is out on your streamers, but it is better if you go to mommyheads.bandcamp.com and get it yourself digitally, because that's actually helps the band as opposed to giving them 3 cents, which they can't really do much with anyways. Well, let's end it here. Let's not make it 4 years before we have another conversation. We'll talk soon about what we were just saying about this potential Omaha thing. And
call me anytime. I'm around today if you have a minute. Let's brainstorm.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Please check out the music of the Mommyheads either on Bandcamp, YouTube, or the streamers. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much.
So, you have a MySpace page or something?